Hobbywing, 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 Hobbywing. Hey guys, and welcome back to Shredcraft RC. I'm Cam, and as many of you know, I've been using Hobbywing electronics on pretty much all of my builds in the past 3 to 4 years, including the Hobbywing D10 and XR10 Pro ESC, which I've been using in my drift cars for the past 2 or 3 years. So recently, Hobbywing released their XR10 Pro G3. So this is their newest and best ESC for primarily RC racing. But when I reached out, I asked if it would be applicable to use with an RC drift car. So that's what we're going to do today. I've got to give a big thanks to Hobbywing for sending me out a brand new XR10 Pro G3 ESC and a Hobbywing D10 Pro 10.5 turn motor. And we're going to be putting these into my Rev D RDX Scarab conversion. As you guys know, I'm a stickler for having clean wiring and tidy setups on my drift cars. As you can see from the last video when I went over putting these electronics onto the Rookie Drift 2.0, I'm going to be upgrading from the D10 and XD10 Pro drift setup to this new G3 ESC, which offers a little bit more tuning and some of the newest technology that Hobbywing has to offer. So I wanted to try this out on my drift car and see if it'd be a good fit for a drift car. Things that I noticed right off the bat, I kind of opened it up and checked it out, but this is a much smaller ESC with a smaller footprint compared to the D10. Once I get this out of the box, I'm going to show you guys how I get it soldered up and set up for a RC drift car. Stay tuned and I'll go over some of the things that you're going to need to start soldering up your own motor in ESC. Real quick here, just some of the tools that I'll be using for getting the new motor in ESC onto the chassis. Set of wire cutters, strippers. These are really handy for making clean cuts and stripping the wire back. Double-sided tape, always good for mounting the ESC. Many of you know I've been running a mid-mount ESC, but I put the rear tray back on because I think with how light this ESC is, I think it's going to be beneficial to run it on the rear of the motor. I have my programming Wi-Fi box here. This is also Hobbywing product, and I use this to tune the ESCs on all my cars. So that's nice to have. I have a little bit of solder, a little bit of flux, something good, and then a soldering iron. And now this is actually my wife's soldering iron. Kind of stole it to use it for this project. So I'm gonna get cleaned up here, get organized, and then show you how I start braining the process of getting the wires nice, neat, and tidy so you don't have a bunch of wires scrambled around your chassis. Let's go ahead and pop open this new D10 motor. So these come with the motor, and I'm going with the all black theme on this chassis, hence why I switched out to the black big bores, kind of the black cap washers. Wanted to do the black and gold or black and bronze theme. First kind of clean themed out drift build. So this is nice, has all the nice polish edges. This is the same exact motor that I've been using for years and years. And then also in the box you get your sensor cable. So this is what connects to the ESC from the motor, give you the smoothest operation possible. And then we have our D10 manual. This will have all the specs and user information for using this motor. We'll go ahead and open up the new XR10 Pro G3 ESC. This is the modified version. They also have a stock racing class version. And so this will come with all the wires pre-soldered onto the ESC itself. XR10 Pro has the smaller fan on it, and then a good length of wires and a cap pack on it here, and then the same type of port for the Wi-Fi dongle, your power button, and then a switch, because on this ESC you can actually switch between, I believe, 3 different tunes for the ESC. Also in here you'll have your user manual. This will give you all the specifications and tuning parameters, so if you don't have a Wi-Fi box you can tune it by doing the old hold the button, let it beep, go through all the sequences. And then we also have a set of brass adapters, and then these are for a different motor setup. What I'm going to be using for this are some brass inserts, and these will go into the motor plugs here, and then I will solder my wires right onto the end of these. There's also some stickers in here, And I'm sure you guys have noticed if you've been watching my videos for a while, but I always have some Hobbywing stickers on my car so I can support the companies that support me. Getting started here, one of the first things that I'll do is I'll kind of hold up the motor so I can figure out the orientation on where I want the plugs. This sometimes will depend on the body that you're running. You might not want to have the wires up top, but for demonstration purposes I think it's going to be easier to kind of show the process of how I do my soldering in alignment. And I'll just kind of let the motor sit and I'll check the alignment holes to make sure everything's going to line up, and then I'll just hold the ESC up to see which orientation I'm going to want to run my wires, keeping in mind a few factors. I'm going to want to make sure my battery cables are going to have enough extension to reach where my battery is mounted, along with having plenty of wire to reach where the plug is going. Keeping with the theme of everything nice, neat, and tidy, I'll just kind of eyeball where I'm going to want the ESC to be checked, and then also making sure that the wire going to my receiver is going to have enough length to go to the receiver. So I haven't mounted the receiver yet, so I can check positioning. And on the RDX there's this nice little slot down here where you can fish the wire down, and then I'll be able to tuck my receiver back up against this transmission here and have a nice clean overall look. And then for managing the capacitor pack here, sometimes I like to just put a little piece of double-sided tape and stick it right to the side of the ESC. And it looks like, since this is a nice, neat, tidy package, it will all go together really nice right there. So once I have it eyeballed, I've got some titanium screws here, and I'm just going to loosely thread the motor into position. And you may have to check for which spur and pinion setup you're running, just so you kind of have the motor oriented how you need it, just because you can rotate these a certain amount. On this car I run a pretty small pinion, I believe a 20-tooth pinion with this spur. So I'll kind of set this in a neutral position, keeping in mind that I'm going to want to have a little longer wires just in case I decide to go back to a mid-mount ESC. It's always easier to cut some more wire off rather than add it back on. And once I get that done, I can pre-plan how my plugs are going to go in, along with getting some double-sided sticky tape cut and set up on this ESC so I can go ahead and place it where I want to place it. Another reason for wanting to mount this onto the rear is so I'll have easy access to the port. Prior, when I was mounting it back down under here, it was pretty difficult to get the Wi-Fi box plugged in. So what I'm going to do is peel the backing off my ESC here, and then I'm going to step back and align it because I'm a stickler for symmetry. That looks pretty good, and then give it a little press. Now that's not going anywhere. And I'll do the same thing with the capacitor here. Take your time, you're in no rush. You want it to look nice, like kind of the heart and brain of the chassis here. So then I can take my ESC receiver wire, kind of tuck it down the slot, taking up that slack, and then I'll be able to mount my receiver where I need it. And then I am using this Futaba R404 SBS-E receiver. So I'll throw some double-sided tape on that as well. So now I can see where that receiver is going to go. Also want to make sure that my servo wires are going to reach. I may have to reposition the gyro as well to get this set up properly, but I like the way that this fit right down in here. So I have everything soft mounted, got my receiver here. I think I'm going to pull the gyro back just a little so my steering wires are not so tight. Hence one of the reasons I have the cutout on this chassis is that there's a cool little orientation for your gyro. So I think if I bring it back to this slot, that everything should reach. And then I'll get you guys set up on another angle and show you how I trim the wires and get them nice and tidy onto the motor. After a little bit of braining and wanting to have a little extra length on the wires just in case I change the orientation of this whole setup, what I've done is I've kind of tucked the wires under the motor. Sorry, I'm trying to hold these in position, and then loop them around nice and tidy together, and then I will solder those onto the plugs there. And if I set the camera down, what I'm going to do is just double check and make sure all these are nice and together. I will just kind of eyeball those to the plug, and you can see it makes a nice neat and tidy loop. And then I'm going to take my Sharpie, just a silver Sharpie, and I'm just going to put a line where those meet so I'll know where to cut and strip the cable back. And then I will solder each one of these individually, one at a time, so it can have that nice loop there. And then I should have plenty of length in case I go back to a mid-mount ESC for this. I'm going to get those cut and I will show you how I do that. So I have my Sharpie marks there, the strippers. And now I have my lengths cut for what I need. And then I'll go ahead and set up the soldering station here. So let me preface this by saying I'm not the best solderer in the world, but I have learned how to do it by doing it in this hobby. So RC cars taught me how to solder. My wife does stained glass as a hobby, so she's taught me a few things too. But the first thing I'm going to start with on this whole process is by using a little bit of flux. And I'm going to flux the wires just so when I go to solder, the solder flows with the flux and it'll help make a nice clean connection. And that's something that you want, especially with these RC electronics, is a nice clean connection, since we're putting a lot of power and voltage through these connections. One way I've found to do this is I'll just take a little bit. You don't want a whole lot of flux because this will run everywhere when it gets hot, but I'll take a little bit and I'll coat wires where I'll want to have that connection. And I'm going to go ahead and do all of these. Just kind of make sure it's all in the wires. Again, you don't need too much. It's nice to have a paper towel around too, because sometimes it can get a little messy. And then I'll take another little dab and I'm going to put it right where I want my connection to be. Now these plugs are already tinned, meaning there's already solder on the brass, and I'm only doing one at a time. So what I'm going to do is quickly tin this wire, and what you want to make sure before you do this is that letter C is going to letter C on the terminals, and I've double and triple checked that. And then I'm going to go ahead and pre-tin this wire, and how I'll do that is I'll just take a clean tip on the soldering iron and I'm just going to put a little dab of solder on there, and I'm going to heat this wire up, and you can see the flux flow, and then the solder flows right onto the wire. So that wire is tinned. And the next step I'm going to do is start to position this wire how I want it to connect to the fitting. And having a set of pliers here helps, just because the wire will get hot and I've burned my fingers enough times. So I'm going to go back in and I'm going to heat up the surface just by touching the soldering iron to it, and you'll see the solder turn silver and you can feel the wire plug in. I'm just going to hold it till it cools, and then I have a soldered connection there. I'll let that cool for a sec. I'll get a little bit of flux on this fitting, put that into plug, clean the tip, take a little bit of solder there, get my B plug tinned. Gonna hold it with the pliers again, and I'll begin to apply the heat. Clean those off, a little bit of flux on the next one, and apply some heat. And then if you can see there, we have a nice wiring job. So the next step will be the battery plugs. Go ahead and knock out these battery connectors. And a good little pro tip that I learned from people who are better than me is cut your battery cables at slightly different lengths. I know on this chassis my positive terminal runs on the front side of the chassis and my negative terminal runs on the rear side. So I cut my negative terminal shorter and my positive terminal longer. And then I just have these pliers here holding the plug in the orientation that the battery will go. So that way I'm able to basically have a third set of hands there while I make this connection. And as you can see, the red one does have this red sleeve on it, so you know that this is the positive terminal. So again, I'm going to take the pliers and position it to where I need it. I'll choke up on that just a little bit. Got everything pre-fluxed, so I'm just going to heat it up. And I had a little mishap there. Pliers split open on me. I'm just going to go over that one more time, maybe with a little bit of solder on there. Looks like a much better connection. And then we have a positive lead. And then I will get my negative lead here. Drop a flux. Heat it up. I will wipe off the excess. Still pretty hot. Then we have two shiny soldered up battery cables in the right lengths for the battery. We are just about ready to plug this thing in and start tuning it. Absolutely love how nice and tidy that turned out. Both of the Hobbywing setups here, so you can see the size difference and how much smaller the XR10 Pro is compared to the XD10 Pro. This one has the fan that mounts up kind of flush with the same beveling as the ESC, and then the new G3 has a smaller fan with kind of a vortex generator on it, but a smaller overall footprint. But both very nice setups. I'm really excited to dig into this thing, get it to the track, and see how it feels compared to the XD10 Pro. So let's get this new ESC tuned. So I have the OTA programmer plugged in here, and then I have my iPad, and I'll throw a screen recording up so you guys can see clearly what I'm doing to set it up. But the first thing I'm going to do is turn that ESC on, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to load up the Hobbywing Link V2 app, and then I am going to connect, and I have this one labeled Shredcraft here. So this is now connected to the ESC via Bluetooth. The first thing I'm going to do, since this is a brand new ESC, is I'll check for a firmware update just to make sure everything's up. So the available version matches the firmware version. Should be good to go. I'm going to go ahead and load into parameters here. This will take just a second as it loads everything. And right now it's labeled 1/10 on road. I'm going to rename this as G3 Drift. Confirm. So settings mode is basic. Let's see what that is. Forward with brake. I'm going to go forward reverse with brake. Max reverse force 25%. Cutoff voltage 3.5 volts per cell. Thermal protection, I'm not going to touch any of that. BEC voltage should be fine. The smart fan is enabled, which is a new feature compared to the XD10 Pro. Does not offer the automatic fan, so the fan will only turn on as it gets hot. Throttle rate control, I'm going to leave that. The softening value is at 15 and the softening range is at 30. These will determine kind of how hard and how fast the power comes on. And since I haven't used these settings on this ESC, I figure I'll start with that to determine when I want to change something. Drag brake, I usually turn that up just a little bit. So I'm going to start it on 10%. The drag brake rate is at 8. Maximum brake force is at 90%. Since we are sliding on polished concrete at our track, I probably don't need this much brake, but we'll know that this is a good starting point. So timing, I usually start my boost around 7 degrees, and then turbo timing, I also set that around 7 degrees. So I'll start low and then I'll work my way up. Turbo delay, usually it's on instant. We'll see what the delay feels like. Turbo increase rate, it's about right, 20 degrees for 0.1 seconds. Turbo decrease rate, I put this down to instant. Since this is calibrated originally for racing, some of these parameters are going to be different out of the box. Gear ratio, tire diameter, 61 millimeters. It's that spur divided by pinion. So 74 divided by 20, 3.7. Data recording. Okay, so that's the basic. Let's check out and see what the advanced looks like here after this saves. So let me go to advanced. All of that looks correct. Oh, here we go. PWM frequency. So this is going to determine how smooth everything is. And on the XR10 Pro, I am running higher. So we'll start at 32,000. Softening values at 15. Softening ranges at 30. I believe I ran this at 20. Track brake frequency, oh, again, how hard that's going to hit. Let's go up to 12K. So it smoothens the brake out, so it doesn't instantly lock up the wheels. Boost start, so I turn this down. Start at 4,500. It's going to go up to 22,500. Turbo timing, all of that looks good. All right, so we're going to start there. We're going to save that. Turn this off. All right, save successfully. All right, so now that we got it tuned, calibrated to the remote, soldered up, and on the chassis, it's time to take this thing to the track, see how it performs. So again, I'm super happy with how clean and tidy those wires came out. I'm gonna have to get some beauty shots and I'll throw those in. So I'm gonna pack this up, throw some wheels on it, throw a body on it, get it to the track, bring my OTA programmer so I can make adjustments while I'm there, get this thing dialed in and feeling exactly how I want it to feel. Let's check it out. And just because everyone's going to ask what the weight of this new setup is, with the ESC being lighter, somewhat smaller, got a battery in the car, got wheels on the car, got the scale system, so I'll screen record that and put that up. But let's set this down, take a look. So 1119.6, 31% front, 69% rear. So a little lighter, see how that feels on track. That is the new XR10 Pro G3 ESC. I hope you guys enjoyed kind of a little overview, some tips and tricks on soldering and setting up the ESC along with tuning it at the track. If you guys have any questions, make sure to leave the questions down in the comment section below. Hit that thumbs up button. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to Shredcraft RC. Only 20% of you are subscribed, and it would be awesome to grow this viewer base. Be sure to let me know what you guys think. Let me know also what you want to see next, especially with this pretty car. Somewhat subjective because it's my own design. If you guys notice, I did blue the titanium up a little more, oxidized it, if you will. But I'm really happy with the overall look and how the black and gold theme turned out on this. As you can see, the car drives great, super happy with it. And I'll be sure to get back with you guys with some more awesome RC content from Shredcraft RC. Catch you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.